Hi everyone, it's Ian here again and I'm back with more Audi TT Mk2 mods and fixes. Now, sorry I've been away for such a long time, had some life stuff go on and have been sorting through that for the last few months, but I'm super excited to be back in the game, bringing you more videos on how to improve, fix, repair and mod your Audi TT8J. Now what we're going to be looking at this time around is an upgrade that not only increases the performance of the car, but also helps to increase and improve safety as well. And that is going to be an upgrade that has to do with the brakes. So what I'm going to be doing is, if you've been following my channel, is that I've been upgrading my car from a 2-litre front-wheel drive vehicle to a 3.6 all-wheel drive car. All this time I've still been running the 2-litre front-wheel drive brakes, which have definitely been a little bit too small for the setup. So I'm really excited to be upgrading them now with some 17z Brembo calipers. Now the reason why I chose to use this specific brake caliper is that because it's widely available. These calipers are found on your Touaregs, Audi Q7s and also Porsche Cayennes. There's also the other variant, which is the 18z Caliper 2. So both of those are both very good options, and you'll find a lot of information online about them where people have modified their cars to fit these calipers. However, there's not too much information for the Audi TT Mk2. So this is going to be sort of like an epic brake upgrade. There's going to be about 3 videos in the series to help you show how to tear down the brakes, then rebuild them. We'll go through the bolting on of the components, so there's going to be an upgrade of rotors as well, and then there's going to be a little bit of a test drive session too. Before going into the strip down and rebuild, I'll just take you for a quick spin around of the caliper itself. So this is how I got it from the wreckers. Just sourced them from eBay. You can see how dirty they are. But you can see that there's the Brembo logo on one side where the crossover pipe is that helps transfer fluid from one side of the caliper to the other. And then on this side we've got the 17ZL logo, that L indicating which side it sits on. So we'll get into the breakdown or the tear down of the caliper. First you want to just get rid of the brake pad sensor by removing this 13mm bolt, which helps to hold the spring clip in. Once that's done, the next challenge is to remove the locking pin. Now because these are used, it's quite tight, but once it's all cleaned up, the locking pin should go in and out quite easily. At this point, it's also good to note the way the wiring for the brake pad wear sensor is run through the clip, and then the way that it's installed into the brake pads themselves, just for reference for later on. Now you can see I am being a little bit creative with how to get this locking pin out. I did forget that the spring clip in the middle puts tension on that locking pin. So you'll see in a bit that once I've removed that spring clip or just shifted it along, that the locking pin does come out much easier, but I didn't realize until later on in the video. So this is where I had that light bulb moment where I actually moved this tensioning clip to then be able to move the locking pin out easier. And then just shuffling that tensioning clip along to completely remove it allows the pin to be removed much, much easier than before. Now, once that pin has been removed or has been shifted over enough, you're able to remove the brake pads along with the brake pad wear sensor wiring. So to completely remove that locking pin, I did decide to get the WD-40 out, which did make it easier to get out of the other side of the caliper there. It can be very, very tight, so just do what you need to do to remove the pin. Now I'm up to the step of removing the pistons from the caliper using compressed air. Now this is what I would not do, so don't follow what I've done here, and what I'll do is I'll provide a link as to what would be the most ideal way to do this. It didn't dawn on me that I should have, I guess, watched other videos, but I definitely would not use some layers of bubble wrap to push the pistons out with compressed air. What you do want to do is get some blocks of wood, one thicker one and one thinner one, to push the pistons out in stages all together at the same time. So just click on the link above, because that's a video that I found to be the most helpful in explaining the pushing out of the pistons process. Another thing that I forgot to do was to remove the piston dust boot seals first, which again is another bit that would make it a little bit more difficult in removing the pistons. So what you want to do is either get a pick or a screwdriver, as I'm doing here, and just release those dust boot seals from the caliper itself and then lift them up and out. Alright, so once you've lifted the edges of the seals enough, you're able to just lift them out with your fingers. You can see this middle one's fighting me a little bit, and it did end up tearing on me, but that doesn't really matter, as when the piston gets pushed out, you can just remove the pieces that have been left behind. Again, I'm going to reiterate this is not the right way to do it, but I'm just going to show you this part of the video just because you can see how quickly the piston shoots out once it's been released enough. Okay, so this is why you don't do the method that I'm doing. It's because once one piston has been released, the caliper isn't a closed unit anymore, and you can see all the air that I'm pushing into the caliper is just escaping from where that one piston's been completely removed. And so in effect, the other pistons won't be getting pushed out at all. So what I ended up doing was replacing the piston back into its bore. Another thing that I don't recommend you do is try and use a screwdriver to pry the pistons out. They won't really move at all because you have to have an even pressure to be able to get them out safely and not damage them. So you can see that I was struggling with this for an unnecessarily long time, but I did get there in the end. Once all the pistons have been removed, it's time to take out the piston seals, which are inside the bores. Now, after taking all of these out, I did notice that each ring has its own unique marking, which gives you a clear definition as to which ring goes into which bore. Finally, all of the components are removed, and this was another light bulb moment where I realized how the fluid flows through the calipers to make them work. Last job to do was to organize the pistons into their respective order into these takeaway trays, and I decided to pop them into the freezer just to make installation a little bit easier, so they would shrink down that little bit more just because the clearances are very tight in those piston bores. Now that's done and the pistons are in the freezer, it's time to get the calipers cleaned up. Now I got them aqua blasted and you can see the result is quite astonishing. I'm really happy with them now that they've been cleaned up, and you can see who I used in the description below this video if you're looking for a good recommendation for an aqua blaster and you're located in Sydney. This is the rebuild kit that I got from BiggRed in the UK. There's the kit number there for your reference as well. Alright, so just pouring all the contents out, you'll have everything in this kit to rebuild the calipers, both sides of the calipers. So these are the dust boot seals. These are the piston rings. You'll see the markings there to tell you where they go. Now these little red things can be used to cover up the bleed nipples if you're missing some of the seals. In this little silver bag is the silicone lubricant to be able to install the rings and pistons with ease. And then I'm just going to get organized here as I sort out the different sizes of the dust boot seals. All of the seals, all of the rings are all clearly marked with their own unique markings, and so my best advice would be to just stack everything that has the same marking up into their respective groups. Once you're organized, you can grab one of each component to then start the rebuild process. First step is to reinstall fresh piston rings into their bores, and as we saw before, each piston ring has their own specific marking, so there's no mistaking which ring goes where. And it is quite obvious when you have these in your hands that there are definitely different sizes to each of the rings and bores. The rings can go in there a little bit twisted, so you can see here I'm just ensuring that they are sitting square inside their bores and not twisted, as having a twist in the rings will make it quite difficult for the pistons to go back in. Okay, now the piston rings are in, it's time to get the lube out and lube up the piston bores. So just get a little bit on your finger and be liberal with how much you put against the piston walls and the piston rings. Once they're all done, it's time to pop the dust boot seals onto the pistons themselves.
I don't know how to test. Well, I've taken the dash out again.
Yeah.
And fiddle around with the globes in the back.
Yeah. You do want to make sure that the markings are facing up and not the other way around, as that's the way that the boot extends from the piston. When you've got the boot on, then you can lube the piston itself up and then push them back into the bores. I found that applying as even a pressure on both sides of the pistons made them easier to push down.
Yeah, they're all like new LEDs.
Are they LEDs or are they bulbs?
Well, I've replaced them all with LEDs from Jacob.
LEDs should be fine.
Yeah, okay.
Or just, yeah, test them with the old bulbs
Yeah,
so you know it's not the bulbs.
yeah. And I don't have the old bulbs here.
Huh?
Well, the old bulbs are gone now, I think. Actually, I can take some out of the pull somewhere else.
Finally, once all of the pistons have been pushed all the way back into their bores, you just want to be pushing down on the edges of the dust boots to get them right in there and sealed. Alright guys, so there you have it. There is the teardown and rebuild of the 17z Brembos. I hope that's really helped you understand, one, how to do it, and two, how these Brembo calipers work. It's definitely given me a really great understanding of how brake, pistons, and the calipers and the seals all function together as one unit along with the fluid to help you get your stopping power. Now this is the first time that I've ever torn down and rebuilt any kind of brake caliper, and so you could see that I was struggling in some parts, but I think it's important to see that with every job that you're not going to go through it all silky smooth, and there are going to be bumps along the way, but just as long as you keep on persevering and learn from your mistakes, try different things, you'll get there in the end. So that's it for today guys. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you learned a lot. I certainly did, and I hope to see you next time in the videos where I show you the installation of these calipers onto the TT. If you enjoyed this upgrade video and would like to see more, please remember to like and subscribe to my channel, and also click that notification bell so that when I do upload new videos, which will be quite regular again from now on, you'll get the notification. Thanks again and see you next time.